Today's conversation hits close to home. Money may look like a number on a spreadsheet, but for most of us, it really just shows up in our body, our mood, our relationship. Today, I'm Sayan, and in today's episode of Healthy Mind, we are doing it with someone who brings both the receipts and the humanity. Jennifer Edward is a certified financial planner who blends financial psychology, trauma-informed insight, and a seven-layer financial wellness framework to help people understand why they behave the way they do with money, not just what to do next. So let's slow down and breathe for a second because this conversation is about reclaiming power. It's about connecting financial choice to emotional patterns, about healing, and honestly, I feel like it's normal with you. So welcome to the show, Jennifer. It's an absolute honor to have you here.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Amazing, Jennifer. And I'm really glad that you're here for this conversation because money stress is something I feel like most people feel long before they ever start to talk about it, right? And I think the best place to start is what actually happens inside us before the numbers even show up. So I want to ask you this. I want to start today's discussion with from your perspective. What's one early physical signal that someone's financial life is weighing on them more than they realize?
So it's great that you're asking about how it shows up in our bodies because what we're aiming for, what I aim for with my clients and the people in my programs and my students is to become more conscious about our relationship with money and what when we're spending money, how we're earning. So sometimes our money issues might show up in under earning or over earning, workaholism, lots of different ways it can show up. But basically, our stress response is this very general response that starts in the amygdala in our brain, these two little almond shaped organs in the base of our skull. And that actually, our money stress began before we hardly had any experience with money. So it actually begins in childhood. So one of the things I try to get people to look for is their their dominant trauma response. So most people have a way that in childhood, when we were stressed about anything, any kind of unmet social need. So sometime when our caregiver didn't give us attention that we needed, or our friends, or we were not paid attention to, or we were literally victimized in some way, our bodies would our brains actually came up with a story, and then our bodies would respond to that story and in an emotion, and our trauma response was actually developed at that phase. So let's say that your trauma response was that you typically liked to, so there's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And so maybe you were a person who would, let's say it was your one of your caregivers would get kind of agitated, and you have figured out how to soothe them. You had figured out that, if you go and you get them a cold drink and then you bring them the paper and you just kind of smile and, have a happy face, even though you're screaming inside, like, oh man, this is not danger. This is dangerous and this is an unsafe situation. But this is the way I'm going to get through it, is by doing this kind of fawning, people pleasing response. That could follow you into your relationship with money, to where you are always trying to meet everybody else's financial needs. Maybe you're raising your hand too often at work and saying, I can take on extra work. I can take on extra work. And it's wearing you out, and then leading you to maybe lower productivity. Like maybe you're doing a lot of work, but it's low quality work because you're you're too stretched too thin. So it could show up It could show up that way. The way that trauma and our emotions kind of hurt us is, so when we have an emotional response, that's a movement of energy, and it comes again from that response of what's going on in my world and what's the safest way to move forward. This is a very primitive part of our brains. It's not very well developed in childhood. It's not even really developed up here in our thinking part of our brain in the prefrontal cortex. And so what will happen is these emotions will come up. They'll kind of, it's almost like like think of shaking up a can of a can of soda or something like that before you open it, right? What's going on inside of there? It's there all this energy. And if you don't release it, what we call expressing an emotion, then it gets trapped somewhere in our body and starts to disrupt cellular processes. So it can show up lots of places. Some of the places that our bodies respond to stress could be in our stomachs, and we get stomach aches. We could get headaches. We could have tension in muscles and like our shoulders and our backs. That's really common. You could have just pain somewhere in your body. That's just kind of where it sits. You could have tightness, someplace where you feel really like heavy. This happens in the chest a lot of times. We'll feel like a heaviness in our chest. And then another way you can tell if you're kind of in a stress response is that it's difficult to think because your body is into fight or flight mode, and so it's really concentrating on the you're in where your body is prepared to do some mechanism. So it's like getting your muscles ready to go, getting your organs are pumped and ready to go, primed for action. You're not in rest and digest and connect. So to be able to connect with other people, you have to be in more of a calm place. So yeah, it could show up in lots of different ways, physically, and you can tell a lot of times because if you just analyze what I call our financial hangups, what is the thing that you do when you have to face a financial activity or a decision when you don't want to do it? So is it that you procrastinate and kind of shut down? That would be sort of your freeze response. Is it that you kind of get really active and maybe you go out and you start shopping or you gamble or you seek a dopamine seeking behavior? That could be the fight response. That's actually like one of the ways that can show up. It
Right.
could be that you actually do fight with someone. So, let's say you have a partner, your life partner, and it's time to do the budget for the month and you just want to argue. That will keep you away from having to deal with that information. So, it can show up in our emotional response to those activities that we know we need to do, and it can also just show up in any place. The word disease is really dis-ease. So any place that we find dis-ease in our body, it could be a stress response from money showing up from our childhood.
Wow. Wow. That really lands because yeah, we'll talk about how couples behave during the financial planning. But before that, I just want to quickly ask this because most people I think don't even realize they have like, money restrictions from a tense body or panicked mind. And once you see that, it explains so much of what you said and what we're going to talk about next. And so, so for anyone who is, say, have a stable job and have a solid income, but they still describe feeling financially unsafe, right? How do you distinguish between actual financial risk and versus a nervous system that is just stuck in some old money trauma?
Yes. Well, this is where you would probably benefit from a call or a talk with a professional because they can help you see if it's really like something that's financially, your savings rate is not in alignment with where you want to go. Um, or hold on, I need to take notes from what you just said. Okay. So if they if you're like, okay, I don't know if I am doing this out of because I really need to be a little bit more careful with my spending. And so maybe I'm really kind of scared about spending because we're kind of in a state where we have to ratchet back or we're not going to reach our goals or we're going to put ourselves into, a financially unstable position. It's really healthy to get the perspective of a professional to help you see, okay, yes, you are okay. There are some healthy little some what do we call them? Like a like the 50-30-20 budget. This is something in America where it's a rule of thumb, right? So you can look at some of the rules of thumb and just be like, hey, am I in some of these healthy levels with these rules of thumb? But really, the rules of thumb are very general and may not be in alignment with where you are wanting to go. I mean, it depends on if you're aiming for retirement and when you want to retire and at what level of income you want to have, or if it's more like, you just have some savings goals that are sort of like, well, I'd like to do this, but if it doesn't happen, that's okay. Then we can modify some things. So getting some objective measurement of your financial health is a good way to start. Just being like, okay, if I'm already saving at a 50% savings rate and I'm still feeling anxious, that's definitely a wellness issue. There's something psychological and neurological going on there. If it's like, I'm saving 10 to 15% and I still feel like, well, maybe I should save a little bit more. Yeah, probably you could save a little bit more, and that would be okay, depending upon your goals. But if 10 to 15 is all you've got because of your stage of life, then that's okay too. A place where it really shows up for a lot of people is in their investing. So when we buy a globally diversified portfolio of low-cost index funds, and usually they're even one-fund solutions that make this very, very easy, and we're still feeling, this is when emotions show up and we have all these biases like loss aversion, confirmation bias that make us really poor investors. This is where it can be really helpful to get a professional to help create a little barrier between your emotions and the mistakes that you're going to make with your money based on those emotions. I always teach people about how to be a successful investor. It's not complicated. And looking at your investments less frequently leads to greater success than looking at them frequently. So, those are the kinds of things. If you're still not feeling safe, and this is why I really do love having partners, because, it's usually pretty unusual that you'll find two people with the exact same scenarios. They kind of come with so they can kind of bounce off of each other like, ooh, I think, you may have a tendency toward not spending, and maybe I have more of a tendency toward spending. And we can kind of help each other be a little more balanced. So I love those perspectives. If you're not in a life partnership, you can look for a best friend and really, or ask your group of friends. You can say, all right, I just listened to this podcast and they were talking about unhealthy emotions and around our money. And I really want to know, so I'm not going to be offended, but could you please tell me what you see in my relationship with money that seems to be unhealthy in your eyes? And ask a group of your friends, because I bet you they know. If it's like, well, every time we go out, you will, you'll say, no, I don't have any money to go out. And it's like, but then we see you spending tons of money on, I go into your closet and I see, 50 pairs of shoes. And if you're telling us that 50 pairs of shoes is more important than time with us, that's kind of the message that we're getting from your actions. But maybe you're feeling, because, honestly, one of the things that comes across from our traumas is hoarding. So sometimes when we surround ourselves with stuff, it's kind of like an adult version of a security blanket. And we can have a lot of things around and minimize the space around us, almost like being in the womb. I mean, it's literally that symbolic. And so somebody might point that out and be like, you seem to just kind of buy a lot of things, and then you don't have any money left over for when we want to go do stuff. And then I never really see you enjoying those things. Like, you always kind of seem unhappy about them. Like, that you might get some feedback like that. So it's hard to see our own hangups. It's usually better to get someone else's perspective.
Every day, millions of gallons of water are delivered throughout Las Vegas. And through continued conservation and investment, your dollars help the Water District meet water demands even during extreme drought conditions. From SNWA's low lake level pumping station at Lake Mead to thousands of miles of pipes, your investment helps operate, maintain, and repair our community's water system. And it's that 24/7 reliability that enables economic success for Southern Nevada. Your investment, your water. Use it responsibly. Learn more at lvvwd.com.
When it's time to scale your business, it's time for Shopify. Get everything you need to grow the way you want. Like, all the way. Stack more sales with the best converting checkout on the planet. Track your cha-chings from every channel, right in one spot. And turn real-time reporting into big-time opportunities. Take your business to a whole new level. Switch to Shopify. Start your free trial today.
Right, Jennifer. And that's so real. And since we are talking about, it's probably the best to have a partner who brings little bit of balance towards the financial planning. I just want to ask this, that from your experience and work with partners, what's the most common misunderstanding about why there are fights about money in the first place?
So, the very first thing we try to do with couples is understand each other's money story. So, when you ask your partner, tell me how money was dealt with in your home growing up, instead of starting with how much debt do you have, what's your net worth, um, you know, show me whether do you keep a budget, or do you just kind of free forming with your spending plan and savings plan? To say, what was it like? Did you see a lot of distress around money? Did you have housing or food insecurity? Did you see one of your caregivers dominate over another one in a financial way? And even if it wasn't in a financial way, sometimes that still shows up as us thinking about money and power in that way, even if it was even if the domination showed up in a different area, we can translate it to money very easily. So getting those money stories out in the open and seeing, what was going on for them, and the kind of the stories and the belief system that came out of their experience. And that really helps set the stage for some understanding. And so the most common misunderstandings are around uh, changing people's trauma responses into character flaws. We misinterpret that. We say things like you're selfish or lazy or unorganized, or you don't. The most common one, you don't care about me more than you care about this thing, or whatever it is that's getting in the way. We'll say, oh, you like that more than when really it's just a matter of trying to feel safe and trying to heal those unmet needs. And we find our life partner, that's our goal. We don't realize it, but we're actually looking for somebody who's going to fill in those gaps and heal those wounds. We don't talk about it that way. We're like, oh, I really think you're cute and I'd like spending time with you. But really, you are looking for someone to meet your unmet needs that you came into adulthood from childhood with.
Totally, totally. I mean, uh, two people can be talking about money, but in reality, say that they're reacting from totally different places, like you said. And honestly, I've seen that in my own life. I've had moments that I wasn't actually stressed about the number, but I was stressed about what the number meant to me. And the person that I was talking to couldn't understand why I was tense. So, because they were looking at purely logically. So, uh, Jennifer, lastly, I would want to ask this for everyone who's listening to this, that we talk about the 7 layers of financial wellness. Um, can you break it down in 2 lines? Like which layer do people overlook the most, and how does ignoring that layer quite impact their mental health, or emotional health, or physical health?
Yeah. So I was going to respond to your little comment about being with someone and them not understanding the meaning of the number behind you. And just if you're in a conversation like that with someone, a good trick is to start with asking them what it means for them, and then getting them into that headspace of like, oh yeah, this is more than dollars. And then it opens up the idea of maybe it's more than dollars for you. If it's more than dollars for me, then it's probably more than dollars for you. So getting curious about each other is really the key in coming into consciousness there. So the layer that people overlook the most, I think we're starting in our society to recognize that psychological layer of money. We're starting to go, oh yeah, there's a money mindset, and that kind of guides our decisions. And so I would say that the trauma response is I don't hear any other professionals talking about that. They're all talking about mindset and beliefs and those kinds of things. But the neurological response sits below that. It's subconscious. It's in the cells. It's in the nervous system. It's not even something that you are deciding to do. It is or that a thought is even promoting. It comes pre-thought. So that's a highly overlooked one. So I call that the neurological layer. So that's the lowermost layer that I've got, which is basically as binary as energy, right? Just in the electron fields of our atoms. I mean, it's that binary. And then another one that we don't talk about enough, and equate it to our own personal financial hangups, is the societal layer. So this is like the two tops and bottoms of the sandwich, and then there's 5 other in the middle. So the societal layer is at the top and the neurological's in the middle, and I'm happy to go through all the rest of them. But the societal helps us understand how many forces outside of ourselves affect our ability to be successful with money. And so when someone meets with me and they're like, "Oh, I'm up to my eyeballs in credit card debt. I just don't know how I got here." I'm like, "Well, you're living in a society where consumerism is the highest value that the government wants us to live by, because that's the economic turning, and how we show that we're, powerful and successful is by how much we spend. It's not by how much we save." So,
Right.
That you're fighting against the entire culture of, if you have a problem, something's wrong with you. You should always feel good, which that's false. Our human bodies are not made for that. And B, if you have a problem, the fastest and quickest and most effective way of relieving that discomfort is to consume something, to buy something, to go someplace that costs money and spend some money. Not to sit with that emotion, not to process it and go, "Oh, why do I feel this way? What came up? What triggered this response in me? What could that mean from my past? Let me work through this. Let me actually bring some energy and some space to this, and do some deep breathing and some movement and some reflection." Right? That's not, because there's no money in that, right? You've got all the tools inside your body to process this stuff, and we can do it with ourselves and with other people, and we don't need stuff to do that. So, we do have a lot of people out there like myself whose business model is around wellness, because it's not being taught in our society in other ways. So you might feel like, "Oh, I need to find somebody to help me through this journey." And yeah, that's something that you actually would buy, but that's to get you to the point where you hopefully don't need them anymore. So those are the two most overlooked ones, I think. And I think we understand the layer below societal, which is relational, like you were talking about before, but we're probably not talking enough about how our family of origin affects that. So we talk a lot about the couples and like, "Oh, we have a spender and a saver," and, "Oh, money fights are still the number one cause of divorce in the U.S." So, we are kind of acknowledging that, but when we don't talk about, well, what about the larger context, our extended family, our sibling groups, our family and our friends, how their values and expectations are affecting our financial lives, we have to discuss that too. So yeah, it affects our financial, when I find that we get that top layer and we say, "Hey, you're not the only one to blame for this. In fact, I wouldn't blame you at all." Then we can diminish the shame, because shame is it's a downward spiral, right? We feel the shame, makes us into a poor decision maker, which makes us make more mistakes. And then we feel more shame. And then we don't make good decisions because we're in the state of shame. And then we make more mistakes. And then we feel more shame, right? So if we can disrupt that shame cycle and just go, "Hey, I got here, but it wasn't entirely my fault. My family of origin, hey, nobody comes out of childhood unscathed. We're all going to come out with unmet needs. No parent needs to feel like they have to be perfect. But when you get to be an adult and you realize this, that it's time for you to address those issues and to, use all the tools at your disposal to heal." Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, it does take off all the pressure that we talked about earlier. And Benefit, thank you so much for breaking that down so clearly. What I'm taking away from this is, and what I think most of the listeners will carry with them is, how connected our emotions and our finances actually are. They're not like separate pockets. I think they influence each other in real time. And once you understand that, the whole process feels a lot less confusing and a lot more like. So, thank you for breaking it down that clearly, Jennifer. And since we are a bit time bound, I would quickly want to ask this on behalf of everyone who's listening to this. What's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, my website is called breakthroughfinancialwellness.com, just all together, Breakthrough Financial Wellness. And you'll see on there some informational webinars about some programs that we have. You'll see a resources section. You can get as much free stuff as you need to, get on our email list. We have group work. We have got just lots of different offerings. Hopefully, something there will work for you. And if you need to, you can just schedule a call and we can see what we can do for you.
Perfect. The listeners that had the details in the show notes for you, so you can check this out anytime you want. And with that, we hit today's mark with Jennifer Edwards. This conversation reminded us that money doesn't just impact our financial future. It sits right in the center of our mental health, emotional patterns, and physical well-being. And the good news is none of us are stuck with the money stories narrative, right? Um, and if today sparked something in you, if you felt seen or balanced or relieved, good. That's the beginning of the financial healing. Thank you for being here on Healthy Beats. Keep taking 9 steps, keep listening to your body, and above all, keep giving yourself permission to redefine your relationship with money on your own terms.